and it was during the Vietnam War, and we hired a kid that had been medically discharged for alcoholism from the Marine Corps, and he took my inventory and decided I might have a problem.
Welcome to another edition of Recovery Happens. My name is Patrick Patterson with BW Rock. Today we're going to be sitting down with Bill as he offers hope to encourage recovery.
My name is Bill Brown. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and that means since the 22nd of May 1977, I haven't used recreational drugs or alcohol, and maintained my recovery that long. Well, I was raised in a German family, basically, and there was always beer on the table and wild parties. We one time lived on a lake. I didn't realize how poor we are, a summer cottage on a lake in Minnesota, so there were always Friday night, Saturday night parties, and that's why I can't remember my first drink, because I used to clean up afterwards, and what I remember the most is the long-necked beer bottles, and I'd be sipping off the bottom of the beer bottles, but every once in a while there'd be a cigarette butt in there, and that's what got in my mind the most. Left Minnesota, we ended up moving here to Michigan. Of course, in between, I went in the Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps for 4.5 years. One of the fun things about it was I decided I didn't like sleeping in the mud with loud noises going off in my ears. So I got into a bass band and got to wear dress blues, and they always parked the beer bus at the end, the bar the closest to the end of the parade, and I would go into the bars in my dress blues, and there was always somebody from Tarawa or Kwajalein or Iwo Jima that would be buying me beers all night. So those were the good times. And then in 1958, I got married, and my wife had come from a family of alcoholism, and she did not like me having beer or drugs, or beer, mainly drugs, beer rather, because at that point in time I was also getting into amphetamines, because I had learned that I could party all weekend drinking and raising hell and still make it into work on Monday morning if I had enough amphetamines. So that was the way the lifestyle had become in my life at that point in time. Well, to be honest with you, Pat, I didn't really realize I had a problem, because that was the family, the background that I came from. What happened was I was working as a supervisor at a position here in Port Huron, and it was during the Vietnam War, and we hired a kid that had been medically discharged for alcoholism from the Marine Corps, and he took my inventory and decided I might have a problem, and he conned me into going to my first meeting. And at that point in time, that was when, about a week later, I realized that I belonged at that meeting, and realized that I had a drinking and a drug problem. And from that point in time, I haven't had to use, because I took the 12 steps, and I did the work that was necessary to maintain my recovery. Life is so good for me, it's incredible. I'm 80 years old. I'm in really good condition for 80 years old. I just married a woman that is 24 years younger than me, and I have motivation to maintain my recovery and my health. But the things that I'd like to let people know, that once you're not spending money on drugs and alcohol and you're doing things right, you can do things like I did, which I went to Spain. I took my oldest son with me, and we drove all over Spain and went to battlefields and museums. Took stones from Lake Huron and put them on the graves of my heroes at Glasnevin Cemetery in Dublin. I visited just about every Civil War battlefield and aviation museum here in the United States. I took my grandchildren and my adopted son to Disneyland in Anaheim, California, and Disney World in Orlando on the same year. So life has been really good for me. I'm a happy camper, I guess is the best way to describe it. Sometimes it's hard to describe everything. I lost a boy in 1985 in an automobile accident. It was probably the hardest thing that I went through in my life. And as a result of that, my wife and I ended up adopting a child. And he was born in 1987 with cerebral palsy. And we ended up adopting him basically because we couldn't take another death. We had already bonded with the child, and the mother was having difficulties, and so they came to us and asked us if we would help out, and we ended up adopting it. And now he's 30, as a matter of fact, he'll be 32 on Sunday. So he was 3 years old when we started babysitting for him. So I think possibly, you know, that really saving his life was one of the greatest things that's happened to me. Also, I could also say that my oldest son just recently celebrated 25 continual years of recovery, and those are some of the good things that happened in my life. So how can I not mention the fact that I started dating and ended up marrying a woman with long-term recovery, and I think of her as having quality and me having quantity, and she's a real joy in my life.
Thank you for watching this edition of Recovery Happens. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please give us a call at 888-68-BWROC. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Great Lakes Insurance.